So after a long hiatus and millions upon millions of requests, we're back with some college football talk. The first thing we're going to get into here is the recent coaching chaos, and a lot of coaches have been fired, a lot of coaches are waiting to get hired, and a lot of jobs have opened.
Yeah, the coaching carousel this year in college football has been absolutely insane. Like some absolute high level jobs, some of the top level jobs in the country have come open. Most notably, it'd be LSU, Penn State, Florida, and then Auburn's another big one. I think Virginia Tech and Oklahoma State are also big jobs. There's plenty of jobs that have come open, and we're going to try to get into some of the details here about some of those bigger jobs. And I know you got some good thoughts on the LSU job, and I'd like to ask who you think are the top candidates for the LSU job.
So for the LSU job, I have three names. Obviously, this is a very high profile job, so it's gonna take somebody that has something under their belt already. The first one I have is Lane Kiffin. I think this is the obvious one, but the real question is, does he want to leave Ole Miss? And if you can answer that question, you could probably answer where he's gonna be next. The next name I have on the list is John Sumrall. He's the head coach at Tulane, if you didn't know, and he's already familiar with Louisiana because Tulane is in Louisiana, obviously. So I think that would be a great fit for LSU. And the last one I have is Eli Drinkwitz. He's been winning at Missouri. He kind of turned Missouri around, and he turned them into a winner in the SEC.
Yeah, if I look at some of those names you talked about there, Lane Kiffin's obviously been the biggest one that's been talked about. He's been in conversations for the Florida job as well a lot, and really, yeah, I agree that the biggest question is, does he want to leave Ole Miss? He's kind of built about, I think, as good as you can get at Ole Miss, but there might still be another step there to get him to be a true like national championship contender. I think it really is just up to his personal preference. Everybody has their own opinion on which job is better for like any coach, but for Lane Kiffin specifically, I think it's just up to what he wants to do. I know John Summerall is a good candidate. He's the type of guy where I think that some SEC people, some of the higher ups, are probably looking for a little more of an offensive minded guy right now, someone that's going to get the fans and boosters more excited and more invested in the team. So I don't know if Summerall's maybe the best option for a place like LSU, maybe more Auburn type of job. But I mean, I think Lane Kiffin, I agree, is probably the number one candidate there at LSU. Probably the next biggest job, maybe equal or even a better job that's open as well, is Florida. And I mean, who do you got right now as the top candidates for the Florida job?
So just like the LSU job, I have Lane Kiffin as the top target for the Florida job. I also think James Franklin is a solid option for the Florida job. If you look at James Franklin, he's been a winner at Penn State, a very consistent winner. He walked into Penn State when they were not doing very well, kind of a mid-tier Big Ten team, and he turned them into a consistent 9 to 10 plus win team.
Yeah, I think James Franklin kind of got booted out of Penn State pretty quickly this year, in my opinion. He had them in the Final Four last year. He's won a Big Ten championship. At least I know it's been a bit now. I think, yeah, they do have the valid argument of he's always came up just short against the top two teams or whatever in the Big Ten. But if I were them, I'd prefer to have the shot at it than right now you're stuck at whatever 3-5, and I don't see the near future getting a whole lot better right away. They're gonna have to rebuild something there. So I think that they did jump the gun on him pretty quick, and I think he can be a winner at Florida State. I know you're big into recruiting. Could you provide a little more context of Florida recruiting and why that could be a better job for James Franklin there than Penn State was?
Yeah, if you just look at the location, I mean, guys are gonna want to come to Florida rather than Penn State more often, and a lot of the guys, the top guys in the country, are from the South, so they'd like to stay in the South, and that's how you see it play out most times. But that's why I think Florida will give James Franklin a better opportunity than Penn State.
Yeah, from what I know, Florida consistently has top 15, 10 recruiting classes, even with someone with Billy Napier at the helm. So, yeah, I think it's definitely could be an upgrade in talent for Franklin. He's obviously in a tougher conference, but with a better roster, that could be the thing to take him to the next level. Lane Kiffin, I think, is the most likely guy to go to Florida. I think he has roots there, right? He's from there, I think, is what I've heard, and I know that that's a place where he would have more resources than Ole Miss. I think he, again, talking about the talent, if Lane Kiffin can have a consistent number 5, number 8 recruiting class in the country, as opposed to Ole Miss, I believe he's always in the teens to 20 range. That could also, Lane Kiffin could be the type of guy where that takes him to the next level and propels him to a championship contender again.
And the last guy I have for the Florida job would be Eli Drinkwitz.
Yeah, Missouri's been a program where I feel like, I mean, we're pretty young, but I've seen old highlights and stuff where they've had good years, but he's now taken them in the last 3 years or so to a consistent, I mean, you can call him an SEC contender. They've lost 2 games, 3 games, and then now they've lost 2 games with them this year. They have the tough injury to their quarterback, Perbula, which is going to put them in a tough spot, but they play number 3 A&M at home this week, and you win a game like that, and I think Drinkowitz, that type of win could propel him to the top of some of these lists, some of these coaching lists.
So moving on to the next job that we were going to talk about, Penn State job is open. This is a huge job in college football, and like I said, James Franklin kind of turned it into a huge job in college football. You get a shot at Michigan, you get a shot at Ohio State, you get a shot at the Big Ten. And the first candidate I have for this job is Matt Campbell. And I have Matt Campbell. If you don't know, he's the head coach at Iowa State right now. He turned Iowa State into a consistent winner and a consistent contender for the Big 12. And if you haven't been paying attention to Iowa State for very long, this was not the consistent vibe around Iowa State. So he turned them into something that they never even knew that they could be. And he already knows the Midwest. He knows how to recruit the Midwest. He can convince you to come to a place that might not be the most attractive place in the world, and I think it would be a great fit for Penn State.
Yeah, Matt Campbell's he's at Iowa State towards the top of the Big 12 for, I would say, a good portion of his career there. And the Big 12 is not an easy conference to win in, and especially not if you're recruiting at Iowa State versus some of those other schools and the resources and talent that they're able to bring in. I believe his roster this year is ranked about 57th. Last year was not that high either talent-wise, but he had them in the Big 12 championship game, and they were 1 game away from being a college football playoff team last year. So, yeah, he's the type of guy where I think he can come to Penn State, and like you said, he brings in some guys from the Midwest, and Iowa State's always had a good defense with him, and you bring in a guy like that, that's the type of guy that can win you some games right away at Penn State and maybe dig them out of this rebuild quicker than maybe some other guys that would need some more time to build something. I know you've mentioned Kenny Dillingham before as a candidate there, the Arizona State head coach right now, and I was wondering about your thoughts on Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny Dillingham can do something for Penn State that they haven't seen in a while, and that's an offensive-minded head coach. But with Kenny Dillingham, I think you got to be willing to give him time. You can't be on this "we need you to win right away" type of thing. And honestly, I don't think any coach should be expected to walk in and be a championship contender at a place. It takes a few years to establish your culture and get your own guys in the building and get them familiar with the culture of the place. So I think Kenny Dillingham would give Penn State a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I think that's the type of thing, like I was mentioning with the defense of Matt Campbell, where you might be able to win some more games early on with them, but long-term Kenny Dillingham maybe is the coach where you look at and say that could give the program a higher ceiling, where you bring in some more talent on offense and all of a sudden you're putting up some points and you go into Columbus and you outscore them a year and all of a sudden the receivers start flowing in and stuff, and that could turn Penn State into a more long-term contender there. The next thing we're going to move into here is what we've deemed to be the 9 biggest games of the week in college football this week. We're going to talk about our picks for the winner of each of these games, and then we're going to talk about our picks against the spread according to FanDuel right now, and we're also going to provide a confidence level on each of those picks against the spread, because really not all bets are the same and not all spreads are the same. So if we feel more confident about one than the other, we'll tell you guys about it. But the first game we're going to get into is a Friday night game at 9 o'clock. Northwestern is at number 19, USC. Northwestern's 3-2 in Big Ten play, and USC's 4-1. USC's got one of the better offensives in the country statistically so far this season. But I think that this is a game to watch because Northwestern has got a good defense, and I think they're a better team than most people expect them to be, and they could be a team that sneaks into USC and gets them here before. I know USC's got a couple more big games down the stretch. My pick for this is I'm picking USC to win the game, but I am picking Northwestern to cover 14.5, which is what FanDuel has the spread at right now. My confidence level on this pick is about a 4 out of 10. I mean, I see where the holes are there for Northwestern to keep it under 14.5, but overall, I wouldn't say I'm crazy confident about them covering the 14.5.
For this game, I'm going to go with USC to win the game. I'm also going to take USC to cover the 14.5 points. I think USC has the offensive ability to put 50 on anybody, and if they play their best game, it's going to be a lot more than 14.5 in my opinion, and my confidence level on this one is going to be a 6 out of 10.
The next game we're going to hit is another Friday night game at 9 o'clock, and this one is Tulane at Memphis, which I know a lot of people probably, when at face value, look at that and don't know a whole lot about it, but this might be pretty much a playoff game right here. The committee has Memphis as being their group of 5 team that would be in as the 12 seed. Tulane is coming off a very tough loss against UTSA. The Roadrunners pretty much put it on them in San Antonio, so Tulane's looking to bounce back. They're 3-1 in the American. Memphis is 4-1 in the American. Memphis is favorited by 3.5, and honestly, I see them winning and covering in this one and putting themselves in prime position to hold on to that last playoff spot. My confidence level on that is about a 3 because if you look at the American, it's been pretty crazy this year. A lot of the top teams have been beating each other and kind of passing up each other towards the top there and fighting for that playoff spot. So my confidence level sits at about a 3, but if you're looking for a good game to watch on Friday night, Tulane at Memphis is pretty much it's going to be a playoff game.
So my take on this game might show you how close this game will potentially be, as I'm going to take Tulane to win the game. I kind of just trust John Summerall as a coach in this kind of spot, and my confidence on this game is going to be a 7 out of 10.
Moving on to the Saturday games. At noon on Saturday, number 2 Indiana is heading to Penn State. This one's more interesting for the factor that Penn State, I mean, they've got a more talented roster than Indiana. I think they very well, if they can play their best game of the year, they could beat a team like Indiana. But if you look on the flip side, Indiana has been absolutely dominant through the Big Ten. They're 9-0 right now, and they're in a prime position to play the Buckeyes in a couple weeks in the Big Ten championship game. FanDuel has this game at Indiana minus 14.5, so I'm picking Indiana to win the game, but I do think Penn State can cover that 14.5. I think this is another game like the Buckeyes where they can they shoot all their best bullets, and if they can come out with a win in this game, this season doesn't look quite as bad for them. Indiana is putting up 46 points per game, and I was at the Ohio State-Penn State game last week, and there were definitely some spots where the Penn State defense looked a lot weaker than it has in the past. I think that Indiana's offense could find some holes and end up blowing this thing open just like the Buckeyes did, but I think the talent gap is more here in this game to where Penn State can keep this thing within 14.5. So I got a confidence level of about a 5 or a 6 on this one. And I'm going to go over to Reg here and see what his thoughts are on the Indiana at Penn State game.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here. I'm going to take Indiana to win the game, but I'm going to take Penn State to cover the 14.5 points. I got a confidence level of 5 out of 10 on this because anything could happen in this type of game. Penn State, definitely the more talented team, but as we've seen, Indiana can put 70 on about anybody, so we'll see what happens, but that's my pick for this game.
Moving on to the next game here, another noon game is number 5 Georgia going in with Kirby Smart to Mississippi State as 9.5-point favorites. This is coming a week before they got Texas coming into Athens, so there's a little bit of that do they look ahead type of thing. And Mississippi State has played some teams close this year, some of the better SEC teams pretty close, but I do see Kirby and Georgia taking care of business and winning and covering the 9.5. And I think Kirby's the type of coach where you can be pretty confident in his team showing up and taking care of business. I think they might win by about 10 or 14 and cover just above that 9.5. And I'm about a 7 out of 10 confident in that one.
Yeah, once again I agree. I'm going to take Georgia to win the game and cover the 9.5. Mississippi State and Georgia both have kept it close with everybody they've played, and I'm going to take Georgia by 10 points in this game, just barely covering the 9.5.
The biggest game of the year so far in the Big 12 is the one we're going to talk about next, and that is number 7 BYU at number 8 Texas Tech. BYU is still undefeated. I've got them a little higher than 7 in my rankings. I think that what they've done has been impressive this season. I got them at 5, but they're heading to Texas Tech this week, and this is the biggest test. Texas Tech has a tough environment to play at. They're a more talented team than BYU. They They got a better roster. They've brought in some good transfers over the last couple years, and I mean, I don't want to call it like throwing something together, but that's kind of what they've done. They're favored by 10.5 in this game against BYU, which I personally think is a bit high. I'm about a 6 or 7 confidence level that BYU is going to cover that 10.5, but I do have Texas Tech winning, mainly for the home field advantage that I think they have in Lubbock, Texas. I think that stadium is underrated in terms of like nationally recognized, and I think it's going to be tough for BYU as well to get their run game going, which is what they do best. They're putting up over 200 yards a game this year, and Texas Tech's front seven is one of the best in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to take Texas Tech to win this game, and I'm also going to take them to cover the 10.5 points. I think Texas Tech, with the offensive weapons that they have the ability to blow out BYU by 50 if they play their best game. And I think BYU could be in a lot of trouble if they get down early, knowing that they haven't been behind in any game this year. They've ran the ball and controlled the clock and kind of been the one enforcing the game. But if they get behind and Texas Tech kind of takes control of the game, I think it's going to be tough for them to get back in this one. I have a 7 out of 10 confidence on the cover of 10.5 for Texas Tech.
Another big game we got going on this week is at 3:30. Number 3 Texas A&M is at number 22 Missouri. Texas A&M is favored by 6.5 on the road here. The big story in this game is Missouri's quarterback Pribula is out. He's been a big part of why their offense has been successful this year. It's a tough injury for them, but Eli Drinkwitz has talked about this week. He's still confident in his team. I think that a big part of why they can be confident is Missouri is top 15 in the country in rush yards allowed per game. Texas A&M is putting up 200 rush yards per game. So if Missouri's rush defense can get some stops there and make A&M throw the ball a bunch, maybe they turn the ball over once or twice and all of a sudden it's a whole new football game. So Missouri's going to have a big crowd as well there. They're going to have a loud crowd. They haven't beaten Texas A&M in a while, so it's a big time for them to potentially get a win, and even without Pribula at quarterback, keep the program going in the right direction, and that also might potentially propel Drinkwitz into some of those job conversations that are going on around the league right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Texas A&M to win this game and cover the 6.5 points. Texas A&M has been winning close games all year, and unfortunately, as a Notre Dame fan, I've had to bite the bullet on that one. But with Pribula out, I think it's going to be a big hit for Missouri. I think he's a big part of their offense and what they do, and I think that's just going to be too much for Missouri, and Texas A&M is going to cover the 6.5 points here.
Another 3:30 game that's going on. Number 9 Oregon is heading to number 20 Iowa. 20 is a little bit higher than I expected the committee to put Iowa in their first playoff rankings. But, I mean, I have no problem with it. I have them at about 23, I believe. This game, there's supposed to be some bad weather in Iowa, some low temperatures and some rain possibly on Saturday, which I think puts Oregon at way more of a disadvantage than it puts Iowa. Iowa is fine with just putting the ball on the ground 50 times and maybe they can win 10-9, and I think they're perfectly fine with that. So I do see this as a game where the Hawkeyes can have the advantage if they can pick up some first downs running the ball, and they can keep the ball consistently away from Oregon, maybe force a turnover or two out of the young Dante Moore in the bad weather, and 100% I can see this game going Iowa's way. So I've got them winning and covering the 6.5 if they win, obviously. And my confidence level on that is about a 5, honestly. I feel like just the way the game's setting up with everything I mentioned beforehand here, I can feel pretty confident in Iowa getting a big win at home and jumping their way up in the rankings and making themselves a playoff contender.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think the weather is going to play a huge factor in this game. And I have Oregon winning and covering the 6.5 points, but I only have a 3 out of 10 confidence on this because I think anything can happen in this game, especially with weather like this. And I just think Oregon has too much talent to not win this game.
The last game we're going to talk about is another 7:30 p.m. game, and this is more for the historical implications. It's the 98th matchup all time between these two teams, and that's 7-1 Navy heading to number 10 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is 26.5-point favorites, and just looking at Navy's schedule and the obvious large talent gap, I do see Notre Dame probably honestly winning by about 27-28 and just covering that spread. But it's one of those games where Navy, all of a sudden, they make a couple big plays and things could get a little wacky. And you never know, especially I think them covering 26.5 is honestly not too far off. So I'll give the confidence level of Notre Dame covering about a 3 or a 4, but I do see Notre Dame handling business here.
So for this game, I think Notre Dame looked unmotivated against Boston College last week, and I don't think Freeman is going to let that happen 2 weeks in a row. The huge talent gap between Navy and Notre Dame, I think, is really going to play a part in this game, just like it did last year. And Navy really, they are 7-1, but if you look at their record, they really haven't played anybody, and I think this is going to be their first slap in the face of the year, and I think it's going to hit hard.
Yeah, I believe we looked earlier, and they have the 129th strength of schedule so far. So the 7-1 record's a bit deceiving, I would say, and the talent gap's definitely there. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning back in again, and we hope to get this thing going again consistently. And we appreciate any feedback we get or anything on it, and we're ready for the rest of this season to play out. It seems like we could have a lot of fun down the stretch here.